The United States as a global trading hub is at risk daily for any number of potentially invasive species to take over the niches that are currently occupied by our own native species. This is true in the case of the Argentine ant, one of the invasive ant species that has established itself in the United States, and one which has made its way onto 5 of the 7 world continents. Linapithema humulae is native to Argentina. They arrived in the U.S. in the early 1800s by way of shipping ports in Louisiana. This is reflected by the range in the southern U.S. where you can find Argentine ants, which is mostly confined to Louisiana, Mississippi, and Alabama. The other major hotspot is California, where the ants were first observed in the early 1900s. Scientists in the state have deduced that the Argentines in California are part of one gigantic supercolony where all the ants in it are related to one another. This was tested by removing some ants from the north end of the colony, San Francisco, and transplanting them in San Diego. The transplanted ants were immediately accepted into their new homes and weren't attacked like any other species would be. This is also a unique concept among ants which share species and are mingling intercolonially. Argentine ants recognize their own genetic makeup and will simply absorb other nearby Argentine ant colonies, creating a much larger colony capable of collecting more resources. This is perhaps the largest colony of any insect species in the world, thus making it likely the largest family of any Animalia species anywhere in the world. In the American South, this species is not as dominant as it is in California. The reason for this lies in one major ant species present in this region: fire ants. Fire ants are one of the only species that have now inserted themselves in the U.S., as they are also invasive, that can contend with the Argentine ants. They do this by engaging in direct conflict with the Argentines. Fire ants are both larger and have more advanced offensive mechanisms in the forms of stinging and what's called gastroflagging, a technique that involves spraying venom on the ground to trap the smaller Argentine ants and killing them if the fire ants can't rustle the Argentines down and sting them directly. In situations where fire ants and Argentines have roughly similar numbers, fire ants will likely dominate the Argentines. However, the portion of California that is most in danger of being lost to the Argentine ant is in a region where fire ants don't survive as easily. There isn't enough precipitation. These red dots are indicators as to whether fire ants confirm survival in a given region. The color on the inside, white or black, indicates whether there is enough precipitation in the region to support expanding colonies. The exact area where the California supercolony is located is where their biggest competition can't stand the climate. Argentine ants are considered one of the most pervasive pests in the United States, as they are not only numerous themselves, but they are protectors of other pests like aphids, mealybugs, and scales from predators similar to human farmers. These ants are hyper-aggressive, attacking any other species of ants that they encounter. They use their numbers, as even among ant species they colonize in masses which exceed most other ants that they would come into conflict with. They band together and rip their enemies apart, and overwhelm nearly every other species, which is how they've developed such a notorious reputation. Argentine ants' impacts on local ecology are not limited to other ant species, however, as they can consume eggs of vertebrates and they will infest and destroy beehives, as was documented in New Zealand, where beekeeping was essentially a wasted effort for several years until what is theorized to be a pathogen has had a major effect on the imported populations in New Zealand, causing a steep decline. Most homeowners in California prefer natural pest deterrents. These have proven to be astoundingly effective on both fire ants and Argentine ants, namely citronella and peppermint oils. In a recent peer-reviewed study conducted by the University of Georgia, citronella caused 100% mortality rates after 24 hours in Argentine ants, and peppermint caused an 89% mortality rate. As effective as citronella and peppermint have found themselves to be, scientists are tinkering with the idea of creating a pathogen for the Argentine ants, as this is what was thought to be behind the population collapse in New Zealand. Perhaps this step will be enough to allow native species to once again flourish and make our local ecosystems strong once more.